Today we're going to do a front brake job on this Lexus IS350. It's a 2006 model. I inspected these, you probably saw my video a couple of weeks back, and measured the pads, and I figure I had about 3,000 miles left. Well, it's been 3,000 miles and it's just down to the wear indicator, just starting to make a little screechy sound while you're driving slowly, not under braking, just driving. There's a wear indicator on the pads, and I've seen a lot of lip on the rotor. I've got pads and rotors. I got them all four all around, but I'm probably just going to do the front ones today. Just a quick change. So to get a jack underneath this car, I drive it up on ramps. You saw my other video. Drive it on ramps, put the jack way under, just in front of the oil pan as the jack spot. Jack it up. Get my jack stands under, lower it down. I'm going to leave the jack there anyway for a secondary safety. So 21 millimeter, take all the lug nuts off, take the wheels off, and let's get started. So we're going to turn the key on, electronic key, and turn the wheel all the way to the right so we can get to the access bolts on the driver's side, left side here. Okay, so we're going to take this cotter pin out, save that, don't lose it, and then we're going to push this pin through. Everything's still pretty clean because I've only put 3,000 miles on it since I last cleaned and inspected. There we go. Let me get my tool out so we can push these back a little bit. And if you watched my other video, you remember my pad spreading tool right here. Works almost like a caulking gun. Just going to put this in here, spread it just a little bit, just so I can slide the pads out. There's one pad. So on that pad, there's the wear indicator. It's barely touching the wear indicator, so I'll measure those in a little bit, let you know how much is left on them. I have to spread that pad a little more, it's not coming off. There's a little bit of a lip on there. Go here this way. There we go. And there's the outer pad. It's pretty worn. Starting to probably touch that little nipple right there, but not quite. Before we spread those all the way, we're going to go up and take some fluid out of the reservoir. We don't want to overflow the reservoir. Okay, so up in the engine bay, we're going to take off this cap and just use an old cup from Travelodge and a turkey baster from the 99-cent store. Do this the old school way, just suction out some of the brake fluid. Get as much as you can, just leave a little bit in the bottom. And some of that fluid's probably going to be dirty anyway because I haven't changed it in a while. Suck that out before we compress the pistons on the brake calipers, and because that fluid will come up as we press those pistons in. So I'm going to turn off the camera and do that. To make my life easier, I took off this plastic cover that was here so I can see the reservoir, and that plastic cover is now here. There is one screw here towards the engine, and then you got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 little plastic rivets. Just pull this up a little bit and pull it out. Try not to break off the little legs on this thing. This cap does not screw on, it just peels off. It's just a rubber cap. Just peel it off. Don't drip that fluid on your paint anywhere. A little screen that you have to get out before you get your turkey baster in there. So just give it a little quarter turn counterclockwise and then lift it out. You can see it needs a little cleaning, so get some brake clean spray and just spray that out. Okay, so with the turkey baster, just drained it down to almost the bottom. Now we can press in our pistons in the caliper. Okay, so now on the back side of the caliper, we're going to take the 17mm socket and get these bolts out so we can remove the caliper, and then we'll get the rotor off. Okay, so we're taking out two bolts, this one and this one. They're closest to the caliper. Just take both those out and then have a bucket handy to set the caliper on top of. So these are the two bolts that came out that were holding the caliper on through these two threaded holes. And let's get ready to take off the rotor itself. It is a floating rotor, so it is not bolted on. There are these two little screw holes. If you have to, you can thread in the right size screw in there and turn both of them at the same time and pull it off evenly. Let me get you the thread size of that. Okay, so it is a metric 8 by 1.25. So M8 by 1.25 is the bolt size. And I've got two of those here. Seems like all Japanese cars use this same size. We'll just thread those in, get a socket on there and turn them both until the rotor. This bolt head is a 1/2 inch. Switch back and forth. I'll put a micrometer on this caliper later and see if it's worth saving or not. Probably not. I haven't been able to use any on this car a second time. You know, if it wasn't too worn, you could turn it on a lathe. Go take it down to a machine shop. So if you did want to turn this, the minimum thickness is 27mm. So you would put your micrometer on there, and if it's any thinner than 27mm, that's after machining, then you can't reuse it. Temporarily put the caliper back on here, and then put a pin in here to block it, so when I'm turning the nuts on here, it won't, when I turn these bolts, it won't spin around, so I will lock it into place. I'll show you. Okay, so I've got the caliper just on with one bolt partly threaded in. It's on there good enough for the moment. So I'm going to take this punch and stick it in there, put it up to there so it locks it, and then take my wrench over here, go down, there we go, and turn, there we go. So now the rotor won't turn on us, and we can get this broken loose. Oh, I just held in place by a little bit of rust. There we go. Now it's loose. Now we can take this back up again. Set the caliper down, and then take the rotor's loose now, just take it off. Okay, this is really good rotors. They've got air vanes in here, and these are directional vanes in here. They're not straight up and down like they are on my Acura TL. These are directional, so you got a left one, it's stamped left for the driver's side and R for the passenger side on the right. So these get really good ventilation. So I'm not going to reuse these, but if you did, you'd want to clean all this rust off of here, and then you'd want to clean all the rust off of here so that you don't have any run out. So I got a tool I'll show you in a second to clean this off. I've got this tool, EverTough Brake Hub Resurfacing Kit. So this is the hub, and you just stick this on your drill and you put it over here, and it cleans around there, and then you can clean between and around here. You want to get this clean so that it seats machine fit. So this is only a couple bucks on eBay. Let's give it a try on the drill. Not bad. It's a little harder to hold here. I'm going to get the entire hub clean. Anyway, you didn't come here to watch me clean this. You get the idea. So since this big tool couldn't get in to clean around here, I'm going to use a little wire wheel to finish it off. That looks better. So we've got as much rust as we can get off of there. I'll get a little bit more off of there and there. But that should sit with no run out. Okay, I think that looks pretty clean. I think we're ready to put the new rotor on there. Okay, so now we're going to do some cleaning of our caliper with some brake clean. And we're just going to spray off the pistons and clean them with a paper towel. Try and generally clean off all the brake dust. I've got an old tray under here to catch all this mess. So just clean it up and inspect the rubber seals around the pistons. Make sure they're not leaking. Make sure they're still rubbery and not torn and cracked. And get that all cleaned up, and we'll be ready to reassemble. So let's see what we got in the way of parts. So this is for the front left-hand disc 43516-22011, and then both front pads together 04465-30500. So let's see what is included in here, if there's any hardware or just pads only. What do we get in the box here? Looks like you get a pair of front pads. You get a pair of inner. These have the wear indicators. So you got an inner outer and an inner outer. Made by Textar. So that's the same as the original. See how thick they are when they're new? I'll measure those for you. So we're going to clean our brake hardware, the pin, the slide pin, the cotter pin, and the spring. So let's measure one of these. It's got a simple ruler. And this is in 1/4, 8/16. So it looks like it is 7/16. Yeah, I can get a caliper out and measure it more accurately, but seven sixteenths, so it's 14/32. That would be a new pad. Yeah, 7/16. No. Yeah, 7/16. So 14/32. Let's grab an old one. See how low did we wear the old ones. It's like we're down to 2/16. Shims. I don't see shims with the new ones. Very interesting. They don't give you new shims. It's very cheap of them. So we'll have to clean our shims too. I'm not a big fan of shims. This one is down to, looks like about 1/16. So 2/32, that's where you'd hit your wear indicators. Just like a tire. 2/32 is your absolute lowest limit. The shim's the same for the inner pad and the outer pad. This is the outer pad. Yes, they are the same. They can go either way. There's a matching set for each one. So you have to just pair those up, and they are interchangeable other than that. Okay. Okay, so we cleaned up this spring. We cleaned up this pin, and the cotter pin's already clean. We got everything clean, ready to reassemble. Okay. Let's get our disc out of the box. Usually they put some oil on it so it won't rust in the box. These are heavy. Try and have clean hands so you don't contaminate it too much. So they've got some rust proofing on here and here, which is nice. Got some nice cross hatching on there. So we'll have to clean this to get all the rust proofing off and any, oil contamination. So you see the machine surface here. It is machined, so it'll be a very smooth fit. That's why we had to clean the hub so well. So we'll get this cleaned and put it on. And to clean it, just use brake clean. Okay, so we've got our left caliper for the driver's side. interesting difference. You have this hole that the old one did not have. So they must have standardized with another model of Toyota that needs that. Anyway, it's irrelevant. I'm going to stick on a lug nut just to hold it temporarily so it doesn't flop around while I'm putting the caliper back on. There we go. There we go. So let's put the caliper back on there. And you can see we've got our pistons all cleaned up. And we pressed them all the way flat with our tool. Top bolts in. Bottom bolt, threading it in by hand all the way so there's no cross threading. Then take our 17mm and torque it down. 2 bolts on the back side of this caliper, torqued, I don't know, I'd say 75, 80 foot-pounds. I did not use a torque wrench. Just tightened it good and tight with my breaker bar. And now we've got the pads set with the shims and the hardware ready to go back on. So what I'm going to do is take some brake lube, and I'm going to lube these, and before I put them in, put a little lube on the caliper piston tops, so that when they contact here, they have some lube on there, and I'll show that to you. So what we're going to use now is Sil-Glyde brake lubricant, and we're going to put some on the back of here, between them, on the little ears, put a little here, and put circles on there. Do it on both of them. And this is a little messy, so I'm not going to film it. Okay, so now that we've got our pads all lubed, we make sure that the braking surface is clean. There's nothing contaminating it. We just put lube on the shims, and this is our inner pad because it has this noise maker when it gets low on pad material. So we're going to, now I got to lube one more spot. We need to put a little lube here, a little lube here. So let me do that real quick. Okay, now we're ready for the inner pad. So the inner pad has the noise maker, and the outer pad does not have the noise maker. And once again, our pad material is not contaminated. Our rotor surface is not contaminated. Now we take our pin, slide it from the inside. Oops, wait a minute. Before we do that, got the spring, and we put some lube here and here on the spring because that's where it's going to contact the pads. Just really need it on the outer edges of it, don't need it on the middle. Just where it contacts the pads. So press that in. slide the pin all the way through. Okay, so press it in and get all the way through. There we go. I'm going to back it out just a minute because I got to see where the cotter pin hole is. There's the cotter pin hole. You've got to have your cotter pin in there. There we go. Face it up. So now we just have to put the wheel on. And you want to remember, since these pistons were pushed all the way out, we'll check the fluid level before we take the car down. Make sure it's topped off. But you want to pump the brakes like 5 or 10 times before you back it off the ramps, or however you're doing it. If you take it off the jack stands, before you move the car, pump your brakes a bunch of times to get the pistons and the pads seated against the caliper, the rotor, sorry. Get it seated against that rotor, because if you back out of your driveway, you're not going to have any brakes the first time you hit the brakes. You're going to have to pump them, and you don't want to crash. So make sure you do that. Wheel on. Make sure if you got any contamination on here, you spray it off with some brake clean. Make sure there's no brake lube on there. Take off this one lug nut. We'll turn the steering wheel straight. We'll stick the wheel on and put our lug nuts on. As you can see, it's a floating rotor, so it's not quite tight on there. So once the wheel is on, it'll tighten up the lug nuts. Okay, so with my hub cleaning tool, I also clean the mating surface on the inside of the rim where it will sit against here, so it is also clean and smooth. Okay, so now it's just a matter of putting all the lug nuts back on. You want to torque it in a crisscross pattern so you don't have the wheel cocked or the brake cocked at an angle. That nothing's cocked on there. Spin it around, make sure nothing's rubbing before you torque it down all the way. Now that we got the driver's side done, it's on over to the passenger side. Just repeat all the same steps. And like I said, pump the brakes before you put the car on the ground. And then you need to go out and burnish the brakes. So you want to do several firm but not hard stops. Go up to about 50 miles an hour, put on the brakes, slow down rather quickly to about 10 miles an hour, let go of the brakes, do not come to a full stop, accelerate again to about 45 or 50, put on the brakes firmly, come to a near stop to about 10 miles an hour, let go again. Do that 5 or 6 times, get some heat in the brakes. You might see a little smoke if there's any leftover lubricants on there that are burning off still. And don't worry if you see a little smoke, that's normal. And then let the car cool down overnight and then drive normally the next few days. Do not do high-speed panic stops. Try not to warp your rotors. What you're trying to do is get pad material from your new pads onto these new rotors. So you're going to have the same brake material on both surfaces. You're trying to transfer material evenly as possible. That's the goal. If you come to a hard stop and then sit there on your brakes, you're going to burn a spot into your brakes, getting hot spots, and it creates little lumps in the metal, and it deposits more brake material in one spot. So you want even spread of brake material on there for the first day when you burnish them in. Then the next few days, nice slow stops, come to a complete stop. don't do a high-speed freeway slam on the brakes and then sit there with your foot on the brakes. Don't do that. At least avoid that the first few days. You know, if you got to stop, you got to stop. Avoid an accident at all costs. But wear your brakes in slowly. Break them in, burnish them in, and that's my advice to avoid warped rotors and to have good stopping ability. I want to show you the part number for the right front. 43512-22261. That's the right front rotor. And of course, I am going to torque the lug nuts to about 100 foot-pounds before I drive the car. So I'm going to torque all of them again. It's a good practice after you do a job like this. Torque them down, drive the car for a day, let it cool down, re-torque them again in the morning. Okay? Our strainer in. I filled it up with clean fluid, new fluid, .3. So we'll get our little strainer in there, put it in, twist to the right so it drops down in. There we go. Okay, so both sides are in there. It just catches particles from getting into your fluid when you're filling it. Okay, and we are up to the full line. That's our minimum line. So we're up where we need to be. The car's not level, it's up on jack stands. Let's get the cap back on there. Okay, so here's our cap. Just a rubber cap, just plugs on there. And let's put our beauty cover, our plastic cover back on. All of our little plastic rivets back in there. See you guys next time.